Welcome to Story Planet, where we bring you gentle, relaxing tales to help you unwind. Tonight's story is Christmas in the Desert, so take a moment, settle in, and get cozy. Let yourself drift into a world of peace and warmth. Now, let's begin. The desert had a rhythm all its own, and over the years, Evelyn had learned to flow with it. The slow mornings, when the world was bathed in golden light, the still afternoons where even the birds seemed to pause in the heat, and the quiet, cool evenings when the sky turned a deep purple and the stars appeared, twinkling like faraway lanterns. Evelyn had lived in the small adobe house for almost 5 years now, ever since she had decided to leave behind the noise and busyness of the city. She had worked as a sales manager in her former life, bustling through crowded streets, filling her days with meetings and deadlines, but she had longed for something simpler, something quieter. So one day, she had packed up her life and moved to this desert, miles from the nearest town, where the world moved at a different pace. Life here wasn't easy, but it was full of peace. Every morning, Evelyn woke with the sun, its light filtering through the thin curtains that framed her bedroom window. She would rise slowly, stretching and listening to the faint rustle of the desert outside. Her home was small, but it was cozy, filled with handmade furniture, earthy tones, and touches of the desert she had come to love. The days followed a quiet rhythm. She spent her mornings tending to her small garden, where she grew herbs and hardy desert plants. Despite the harsh conditions, she had managed to cultivate a little plot of land where rosemary, thyme, and even some lavender bloomed. It was her pride, a testament to her survival in this arid landscape. After her morning tasks, she would take her old pickup truck into the nearest town, about an hour's drive away. The town was small, with a single main street lined with old shops and a modest market that sold local goods. It was a far cry from the large grocery stores she used to frequent, but she had grown to love the simplicity of it. On market days, she'd wander through the stalls, greeting familiar faces. There was Maria, who sold fresh eggs and bread baked in her stone oven, and Sam, the leathery old man who offered vegetables from his small farm. The desert provided in its own way, and the people who lived here had learned to make the most of it. Evelyn would pick up what she needed, chat with the locals, and then drive back home with a sense of contentment she had never known before. Evelyn wasn't lonely, not in the way people imagined she might be. The solitude of the desert had given her time to reflect, to be present in her own life. There were moments of longing, of course, especially as the holidays approached, but she had learned to fill her days with meaningful tasks and quiet joys. She would cook meals from scratch, write letters to friends in far-off places, and spend her evenings by the fire, reading or simply watching the stars. This year, as Christmas drew near, Evelyn had started preparing for her usual quiet celebration. She had never been one for grand festivities, but she liked the simple traditions, the lighting of candles, the small ceramic nativity set her mother had given her, the scent of homemade bread filling the house. She would often go for long walks on Christmas Day, marveling at how the desert, though stark and dry, still felt alive in its own way. But as she looked at the decorations she had set out, Evelyn found herself wondering if this year would feel different. The holidays could bring a kind of stillness that wasn't always welcome, a reminder of the people who weren't there, the family she had left behind in the city. She had made peace with her solitude, but sometimes, during the holidays, the house felt quieter than she liked. But that day, as Christmas Eve settled in, a strange feeling tugged at her. For some reason, her intuition told her that a guest might arrive tonight. She chuckled softly to herself, shaking her head at the thought. "Who's going to come all the way out here to this lonely home?" she muttered, knowing she hadn't received any hint or message from her friends in the nearby town. Evelyn was in the midst of preparing a simple dinner when she noticed the figure approaching along the sandy path that led to her home. It wasn't often that she had visitors, especially not this time of year, and her first thought was that it might be one of the neighbors from town stopping by. But as the man drew closer, she realized she didn't recognize him. His clothes were worn from travel, his steps slow and deliberate, as though he had been walking for days. He carried nothing but a small pack on his back, and his face, though kind, looked tired, marked by years on the road. Curiosity stirred within her, and she stepped outside, the cool evening air brushing against her skin as she called out to him. "Are you all right?" The man looked up, his expression a mix of surprise and gratitude. "I'm fine," he replied, his voice rough from the dry air. "Just passing through. Didn't mean to disturb you." "You're not disturbing me," Evelyn said, offering a gentle smile. "It's Christmas Eve. Why don't you come inside and rest for a while?" The man hesitated for a moment, glancing at the small adobe house and then back at Evelyn. There was something about her tone, calm, inviting, that made him feel at ease. With a slow nod, he followed her inside, grateful for the warmth and the hospitality. Once inside, the scent of stew simmering on the stove, and the soft glow of candlelight wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. The house was small, but filled with the kind of warmth that came from a life well lived. Simple decorations adorned the walls, handmade ornaments, desert succulents arranged on the mantel, and a small nativity set in the corner. It wasn't the kind of Christmas he had experienced in years, but it felt right. "I'm Evelyn," she said, offering him a glass of water as he sat at the small wooden table. "Finn," he replied, his voice softer now. "Thank you. I wasn't expecting this." Evelyn smiled. "The desert can be harsh, but it teaches you how to be kind." As they settled into the evening, Finn shared bits of his story. He had been wandering for the better part of 6 years, traveling from one place to the next with no real destination. His life had taken him to the farthest reaches of the world, across snow-covered Nordic landscapes, through dense forests, and along endless roads. But in all those years of wandering, he had forgotten what it felt like to stay in one place, even for a night. "I haven't celebrated Christmas in, well, I can't remember the last time," he admitted quietly. "It's been years since I've stayed anywhere long enough to even think about it." Evelyn listened, her heart softening as she heard his story. She, too, had left behind a life that no longer fit, seeking peace in the quiet of the desert. But unlike Finn, she had found a home, a place where she could put down roots. Hearing that Finn had spent so many Christmases alone touched her deeply. "Then tonight," she said softly, "we'll celebrate, properly." Finn looked up, surprised. "I don't want to impose." "You're not," Evelyn interrupted gently. "It's Christmas Eve, and no one should be alone tonight." With that, she began to move around the house, pulling out the few Christmas decorations she had tucked away. They were simple: some red ribbons, a few extra candles, a small string of lights she hung across the mantel, but they brought a festive warmth to the room. Finn watched her, feeling something stir within him that he hadn't felt in years. Evelyn handed him a bundle of ribbon, showing him how to tie it around the wreath on the door. Together, they added small touches of holiday cheer to the house, their movements easy and comfortable, as if they had known each other much longer than a few hours. As the evening deepened, they sat by the fire, the glow of candles filling the room with a soft, comforting light. Evelyn served the stew, rich, hearty, and filled with the flavors of the desert. They ate quietly at first, but soon the conversation flowed, and they found themselves talking about their lives, their travels, and the places that had shaped them. For Finn, it was the first time in years that he felt at ease. He had spent so long moving from one place to the next, always searching for something, but never quite finding it. And now, here in this small adobe house in the middle of the desert, he felt something he hadn't known he was missing: connection, warmth, and the simple joy of sharing a holiday with another person. As the night wore on, Finn's heart softened. The desert, this house, and Evelyn's quiet hospitality had stirred something in him. It wasn't just the warmth of the fire or the comfort of the meal. It was the realization that, for the first time in years, he felt at home. The next morning, Christmas dawned quietly over the desert. The sky was a soft, pale blue, and the sun cast a golden light over the sand. Evelyn woke early, the sound of birds outside her window greeting the day. Downstairs, Finn was already awake, sitting by the fire, lost in thought. "Merry Christmas," she said softly as she entered the room. "Merry Christmas, Evelyn," Finn replied, a warm smile spreading across his face. They shared a simple breakfast of fresh bread with honey, eggs, and coffee. The conversation was light, filled with the easy companionship they had discovered the night before. After breakfast, Evelyn suggested they take a walk, and together they wandered along the sandy paths that wound through the desert. The air was cool, but the sun warmed their faces, and they walked in peaceful silence, surrounded by the vast, golden landscape. The desert stretched out endlessly before them, and for Finn, it felt like the perfect setting for the kind of Christmas he had long forgotten: simple, reflective, and grounded in the beauty of nature. The day unfolded slowly, but there was no rush. Evelyn showed Finn her small garden, pointing out the hardy plants that had managed to thrive despite the harsh desert conditions. She talked about her trips to the nearby town, how she had gotten to know the locals at the market, and how the desert had taught her to live with less but appreciate more. As they walked, Finn began to open up more about his own life, how he had left his hometown years ago, driven by a need to explore the world. He had spent years moving from place to place, never staying anywhere long enough to call it home. At first, it was exciting, Finn admitted, his voice thoughtful as they walked along the narrow desert path. "I felt free, like I could just keep moving and never look back. But after a while, it got lonely. I forgot what it was like to feel connected to someone or something." Evelyn nodded, understanding. The desert has a way of reminding us of what's important. It's quiet, but it doesn't let you hide from yourself. Finn looked around at the desert, seeing it with new eyes. He had wandered through many places, forests, mountains, cities, but the desert was different. There was something about its vast emptiness that made him feel both small and grounded at the same time. They spent the afternoon preparing a simple but special Christmas meal. Evelyn baked bread, and they roasted vegetables from her garden. As the house filled with the scent of fresh herbs and warm food, Finn felt a deep sense of contentment. It wasn't the extravagant holiday feasts he had known as a child, but it was more meaningful, a quiet celebration of the present moment, shared with someone who had welcomed him with open arms. By the time they sat down for Christmas dinner, the sun had begun to set, casting a warm, golden light through the windows. They ate slowly, savoring the food and the conversation. It felt magical in its own way. Two people who had found each other in the middle of a vast, lonely desert, sharing a day that had become unexpectedly special for both of them. After dinner, they sat by the fire once more, sipping tea and watching the flames dance in the hearth. Finn couldn't remember the last time he had felt so at peace, so connected to the moment. For years, he had been running, chasing the next horizon, the next adventure. But now, sitting here in this small adobe house with Evelyn, he felt like he had found something he hadn't even known he was searching for. "This has been the best Christmas I've had in years," Finn said quietly, his voice filled with emotion. "I didn't realize how much I missed this. Being with someone, sharing a meal, celebrating." Evelyn smiled, her eyes soft and understanding. "I'm glad you're here, Finn. It's been nice to share this day with someone. I was planning to spend it alone again this year, but now I can't imagine it any other way." They sat in silence for a while, both reflecting on the unexpected gift this Christmas had brought them. A reminder that even in the most remote places, connection and warmth could be found. The next morning, the sun rose over the desert, casting long shadows across the sandy landscape. The house was quiet as Finn prepared to leave, packing his few belongings and getting ready to continue his journey. But this time, his journey felt different. He wasn't wandering aimlessly anymore. He was heading home. Evelyn stood by the door, watching as Finn adjusted his pack. "You're heading home, aren't you?" she asked softly. Finn nodded. "Yeah, I think it's time." "I'm glad you found your way here," Evelyn said, her voice filled with warmth. "You'll always have a place here if you ever find yourself back in the desert." Finn smiled, his heart full. "Thank you, Evelyn. I'll come back whenever I can, and as many times as I can." There was no need for grand farewells or promises. The connection they had formed over this quiet, magical Christmas was enough. With one last look at the small adobe house, framed by the soft light of the morning sun, Finn turned toward the road. His steps were lighter than they had been in years, and for the first time in a long time, he knew exactly where he was going. He wasn't just leaving the desert behind. He was taking with him the peace and warmth he had found there, the memory of a Christmas that had changed him, and the promise that he would return. As Evelyn watched him disappear into the distance, a sense of peace settled over her. The desert had given her many gifts, but this Christmas had been one of the most unexpected and beautiful. She smiled to herself, knowing that this wasn't the end, but the beginning of a new kind of connection, one that would last far beyond this quiet desert Christmas. And so, with the desert stretching out before him and the promise of future visits in his heart, Finn traveled home, knowing that the peace he had found with Evelyn would always be waiting for him, whenever he returned. As the quiet settled back over Evelyn's home, she couldn't help but reflect on the magic of shared moments and connections in the most unexpected of places. Dear listeners, thank you for joining us in this quiet corner of the world. If this story brought you a sense of peace, a gentle pause in your day, or made you feel the warmth of a kind connection, consider liking it to help Christmas in the desert reach a wider audience. Your like can help others find the perfect relaxing story to wind down with. So if you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, and let's spread the calm to others who need it too. You can also share it with friends and family who may need a peaceful moment to unwind. And if you're not already subscribed, make sure to do so to enjoy more relaxing stories from Story Planet. We'll be here, ready to help you relax with daily stories crafted to soothe and bring calm.